How many? No, that's a real serious. We want to know how many do you have?
Yeah.
I think this is really interesting because, you know, obviously as tattooers, we were drawn to tattooing in some primordial fucking way, some means, and by proximity to tattoos and whatnot. So all of us have started tattooing, but you also quit tattooing and then came back to tattooing.
Yeah.
Which I don't think a lot of tattooers necessarily do. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
I think that's really interesting.
Well,
or could be.
Yeah, I mean, there had been a while around in the late 90s. I loved doing tattoos. There was so much I loved about it. There was so much I was grateful for in my tattoo career. But at the same time, I started to get this weird kind of resentment. I felt like tattooing had just sucked all the time out of my life. Like, you know, my daughter, when she took her first steps, I was tattooing. When she said her first words, I was tattooing. So much of her early childhood I really missed because I was working. And of course that was crucial to support the family. So there's no way of getting around it. And just, you know, to be entirely honest, like the hardest part of tattooing for me is not doing the tattoos, it's dealing with people. And it can be the best and it can be the worst. I've had sessions where I've developed really intense, immediate friendships with people. I've learned about things I never would have learned about before, been introduced to other parts of the world's massive spectrum that I never would have seen. You know, when it really works, it's the most amazing feeling, you know, when you've got a great rapport with the client and you're both, when everything's just on the same page. But, you know, that's not every day, you know, and you know, I just gotten to a point in my life where I just felt like I wanted to spend less time dealing with people. And I really felt like at that point I was really feeling kind of hobbled by the limitations of tattooing. There was a lot more I wanted to do, that I wanted to express, that I wanted to make, that I felt like I'd never be able to do in tattooing. And, you know, I'd thought about that for a long time. And there was a while even, like when at Tattoo City, the last couple of years I was there, I was going to school full time as well. I was gonna get into diagnostic medical imaging. I was like, I want to get all away from all the art shit. I want a real job. Yeah, and I spent a couple of years studying that. And, you know, it was really fun. Anatomy and physiology are fascinating. And, you know, I had a great time. I learned a lot. I don't regret it at all. But after a couple of years, I realized, like, it wasn't a career choice for me. You know, just for various reasons, I realized this was not something I'd be happy doing for the rest of my life. But, and so then, you know, I just kind of figured I'd lay off for a while and just keep dedicating myself to tattooing and see what happened. And years went by, and in 2006, I was going through a lot of changes in my life. And I was at a point where I was really unhappy with the situation where I was working and really unhappy with just being a tattooer in general, to be honest. I mean, I was happy with the work I was doing, but just at the end of the day, I just was so worn out from dealing with people so much, you know? And so one day, I finally, a series of circumstances I won't bother going into, led me to a point where I got so worked up, I was so desperate, I was so upset with the whole thing. And one day I just called the shop. I'm like, look, I'm not going to, you know, cancel all my appointments. They're like, well, when do you want to reschedule them for? I was like, I don't. Like, I'm done. I'll come in later and pick up my shit. And I left. You know, I was on good terms with them, but, you know, I left. And I didn't know what the fuck I was going to do. I had no idea, but I just knew that it was time for me to make that jump into the dark. No, you know, it was terrifying because, you know, I didn't know anything else. I'd been tattooing since I was 19 years old. I was like The only other thing I know how to do is make espresso and paint houses, you know? And so, you know, I just made that decision. I was like, okay, this is it. Fuck it. No matter what happens, I'm quitting. And wanted to dedicate myself to painting and doing my own thing. But of course, I knew I couldn't make a living with that right off the bat, or didn't think I could. I went out that day and I applied at Starbucks. I applied at, you know, Borders, like every fucking thing like that I could think of. None of whom ever called me back. I was like, I'm not even valid for a job at Starbucks. This is pathetic, you know. And I started doing some paintings, and my original idea with the painting was like, it never occurred to me that I could get into gallery stuff or sell paintings in a way that I could live off of. And I thought, well, you know, maybe I'll do children's books, because I've always loved children's books, you know, and a lot of the ones from when I was a kid are still big influences on me now. And so a lot of the early paintings I did had this very whimsical kind of fairy tale-ish quality, because what I was doing was painting stuff that was meant to be a pitch for getting me into that kind of job. I was like, look, I can do these kinds of things. Let me illustrate this children's book. You know, I thought that's what I would do. So I started doing some of that, but I hadn't shown anybody yet. And Grez called me out of the blue. We had been friends for many years. And he called me out of the blue. I hadn't talked to him in ages. And he's like, listen, I got a crazy question for you. But would you ever be into doing a painting by commission? And I was just like,
funny you called.
Perfect fucking timing. So, you know, I did a big commission for his wife, Claire, and it was a lot of fun. And, you know, I posted pictures of it. People were really into it. And you know, I started realizing, well, maybe I can sell paintings, but paintings are expensive. And I was like, that's, you know, and I'm slow. So I made my first print. Right. When I was in Reno. I did a print with just, you know, a local printer that hadn't really done art stuff before. I did a print, and I went up to the Sacramento convention and just, boom, sold them all out so fucking quick. And I was just in shock. I was like, I can actually do this? Like, people want, you know, like, it just didn't make sense to me. But I was like, well, if it works, you know? So I started posting shit on, whenever I did a new painting, I'd post it on Facebook, or not, MySpace at the time. Post it on MySpace, and if a bunch of people liked it, I'd be like, okay, I'll make prints. And then I would put the prints up on MySpace with a little PayPal button. You know, I had no idea that I was beginning an online business.
Right.
I just thought, I've got some prints. People who like my stuff follow me on MySpace. Maybe I'll sell a few. And that became my primary source of income, because then I could do a painting, get paid for the painting, and then make prints and get paid for that. Right. And that helped make up for me being so slow. Okay. So really rapidly that turned into a big thing for me. Like, it just blew up really fast. Too quick for me to deal with in the beginning. I had to get an assistant and figure out all these systems for dealing with it. And so, you know, I spent 7 years dedicating myself to just painting, no tattooing at all. First 4 years, I wouldn't even go into a tattoo shop. I wouldn't set foot in one. And I just developed like almost an allergy, you know. And so yeah, I just spent all my time working on that. And then I started getting offers for gallery shows. And I was like, wait, what the fuck? Gallery shows? Like, I never went to art school. Like, who's going to buy my shit? And I did it, and it worked. And I was just like, well, I guess I'm a painter now. You know, it's like, it's, you know, I never intended to be, but here I am. You know, it's working. And I was super stoked. But years went by, and after about the first 4 years, I started wanting to go and, you know, friends I knew that were tattoos, I'd meet them for dinner outside. Then one day I was like, I'm going to go drop by the shop and visit my friend Colin Stevens, who I used to work with. And I dropped by, and it was, you know, suddenly I walked through the door and I could feel that magic.
Was he at Body M then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could feel that magic, and like all these feelings started coming back, and I realized how much I missed it.
Right.
How much I missed that, well, I don't know, everything, you know, all
sure.
the stuff you miss, you know. And I just, you know, in the beginning I was like, no, can't go back, gotta be good about this, can't, you know. time went on and I started thinking more and more about it, and eventually, yeah, I was like, well, I'm going to come back into it, but to try and balance painting and tattooing so that I don't feel trapped in tattooing. That tattooing it became more fun for me again once I didn't feel trapped in it. Once it was only one aspect of what I was doing, it started to become much more exciting to me. And, and I started learning how to take some of what I had learned in painting and apply it to tattooing a little bit, and started changing my tattooing more. And, since then it's been, a lot of ups and downs, but at this point right now, I got to say that I've been more inspired and excited about painting and tattooing than I have been in a very long time. It's been, after Cash was killed, I couldn't paint at all for a year. I couldn't draw or paint or anything for a year. And then the second year, I managed to turn out a couple of paintings. It was grueling. Way more paintings torn up and thrown out than done. But I managed to get a couple done. And third year, started getting a little more done. And then I started actually, my therapist she's like, look, you're a fucking artist. You're in a perfect position to use your job, your means of supporting yourself, as a therapeutic tool. And so I started allowing myself to kind of let more of like the crazy shit I was processing, the shit I was going through manifest in my paintings, and a lot of it got really dark. There was one painting in particular I did that I lost huge amount of followers the minute I posted it, because it was a bit grim, a bit brutal. But it was what, I was using it to express what I was going through, and I enjoyed that, and I think there was kind of while I was in Europe was when some major changes started happening. After Cash was killed, I started rethinking everything and redefining my entire life, my relationship to the world, but of course my relationship to tattooing and to art. And it really did become a very helpful thing for me therapeutically for dealing with grief to work like that. And more at that point, I started allowing myself to become freer and freer. Like a huge jump for me was, when I was in Germany, Adam invited me to come out and work for him in Berlin for a few days. They were doing a Strange Love thing in Berlin with a whole bunch of tattooers visiting. And it was so, to be honest, I had really been out of the loop as far as a lot of younger tattooers. I mostly knew a lot of people who were my age. And it was so exciting for me to be working with all these younger people that were doing so much different, very unique, very inspired and unusual stuff that, really made me feel excited. It was like, wow, there's a new way of looking at things, new ways of doing stuff. And, that really, after that week, it really set me on fire. I came back to Aachen, where I was living, and I started I was like, I'm going to do some Flash. I hadn't done Flash in years. But what I did that changed everything was in the past when I did Flash, I would draw the designs on tracing paper and then arrange them on the board to where I had the right layout. Yeah. And, as we all do,
Sure.
But with this one, what I did was I would pick a piece of paper and I would just pick one spot and draw a design just on the paper. And then just start adding shit. I didn't draw stuff on a little bit, but mostly I didn't draw them on tracing paper before. I just did it directly on the paper and just built it as I went. I had no idea what the composition would be. I would just let it develop. And like if there was a weird shape that needed to be filled, I'd be like, well, what does that shape look like? Kind of looks like a shrimp. I'll paint a shrimp, Like just whatever would pop into my head. I kept it really open. Tried to be as intuitive as I could, tried to be as open-minded as I could, and tried to just tried to do the best I could to not hinder, to just flow,
right?
And just let it flow in a really natural way. And I was so happy with the results of that. It was so much more, it made me so much more content than Flash I'd done in the past, because so that's really what I've been working on now, is just,
Like liberating yourself.
Liberating myself, exactly. And trying to make my tattooing a little looser in some ways. Like, sometimes I look at my old work and it looks like, when I draw a girl, it's like the pose is dynamic, but it looks like a statue of a dynamic pose, you know? And then there's people I worked with, for instance, like Tim Lehigh, whose work has a certain looseness to it that works so well. It gives it this much more intense dynamism and life, you know? And I really,
good energy.
It was really hard for me to do that, to sacrifice planning for energy. And that's what I'm really going for now is, you know, without loosening up too much, loosening up enough to let things become more expressive, more intuitive, less intellectual, I guess, in a way, you know?
Getting out of your own way, I guess.
The more I do that, the happier I am with what I do, you know? The more I just leave things open and let things develop on their own and don't try and constantly impose my ego. I mean, of course, the images are all products of my ego. These represent my fears, my desires, my ideals, you know, my horrors, all of this. So of course they're an expression of my ego, but the more intuitive I get, the more I feel like it's at least a deeper part of my ego, something that's more, just something that's different, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to express exactly why it's different, but
maybe it's a more mature part of your ego.
Possibly.
I don't know.
Possibly. Maturity's always been a problem for me. Even at 50, I feel like a teenager half the time. But well, except for my body. Mentally, I feel like a teenager. Physically, I feel like I'm 90. But you know, that's how it goes.
I remember you calling me and talking to me about, hey, do you want to open up a tat shop? I'd like to work with you. When was that? Like, what section were you there? Was that
I think I was probably on a lot of cocaine was the section I was in right there, to be honest, you know. But no, there's been a couple of times that I've thought about opening shops and like wanted to like, you know, do something. But I'm trying to remember exactly. That would have been
2002?
Probably about then. Because, I was working at Temple and I was really happy there. But I was starting to think more and more of doing something a little more private, a little less crowded, a little bit less tattoo shoppy, more private studio sort of things. I was getting older, and it's like party time at Temple was fun, but
right.
I was getting to a stage of my life where it was like, I wanted to do something a little quieter, a little more grown up, maybe.
Sure.
And
less distracting.
Yeah, less distracting,
I can relate to that.
Yeah, no, it can be. I mean, to me, there's definitely good and bad points about both. Like, when you're doing the private studio, it's, like as we were discussing earlier, when that rapport is good, it's the most amazing thing because there's no distractions and it's just you and this person in communion performing this act, and then, but when you're in the private studio and your customer's driving you nuts, there's no one around to diffuse it. There's no one else you can kind of get in for a minute to lighten things up. And it's just you and this person that you can't fucking talk to with a spotlight on you. It's a, do you know what I mean? You've done that. You felt, that can be a little harrowing.
Yeah, and then you really have to pull out the kind of inner, I don't know, extrovert, psychologist, apologist, I don't know, entertainer.
Yeah.
Pull out a lot of
bartender,
different hats. You got to figure out, I don't even have this hat. I'm going to go make one quick. I'm going to wear it for you on top of this other hat that I don't ever wear either. Yeah. And then I'm going to get through this the best way I can for you because I need to. But on the other hand, you're like, fuck, I don't want to fucking do this.
Yeah.
This isn't who I am. It's not what I do. This is the
jump
conversations.
Through a lot of flaming hoops.
Yeah, man. That's a lot of interesting aspects of what tattooing really means when you're executing.
Yeah.
You're not a tattooer. You're doing whatever. 10 things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Henry explained to me in the beginning, and he was like, actually doing the tattoo. He's like, that's the easy part. It's like the tricky part is, with your customers, you're like part carny you know, part like Sideshow Barker, part like nurse, part bartender, part hairdresser, part therapist, you know, all this stuff that you know, I mean, not every customer, but a lot of people expect this of you. And, you know, he was really big on the performance aspect of it, you know, and it's true that, you know, really tattooing at least can be like kind of a performance art in a way, because, you know, when people walk out of the session, it's not just the tattoo that defines the session. It's everything that happened during that session. It's you know, the conversation, all of it, you know, the smells, the sights, the sounds. You know, to us, we do this every day. So it's like, yeah, another day tattooing. To them, it's like, this is a special fucking day, and it's carved in their memory. And, you know, obviously I'm certainly not, you don't need to coddle your customers or spend all your time trying to entertain them. But there's an element of showmanship sometimes that I think is a valid thing. You know, it should, you know, when somebody comes out of a tattoo session, if it's optimal tattoo session, they don't just walk out with a great tattoo, they walk out with some good stories. You want them to walk out of there and go get a drink with their friends and be like, oh yeah, and like, you know, talk about some story you guys talked about, or like, you know, that's a big part of it. Always has been for me, you know. Absolutely. It's like,
I mean, it always endears a client. Mm-hmm. You know, I think,
and it makes it more fun for us.
Absolutely. I think it was Mike Wilson. This is similar but a little different. But Mike Wilson, I believe it's him who told me, if you can, you know, if your clients, if you get enough rapport with your clients, they consider you their friend, and they will always come back to you, even if the tattoo is like a 70% tattoo.
Oh yeah.
Like that's it. Yeah. You're like client for life.
Oh, how many
you're
times?
Like a 70% tattoo that you're like, they like you. You're entertaining. You're fun. You give them what they need out of that thing. Like, forget it.
There's been so many times that I've had people come in, you know, mostly when working in street shops, and they've got like a tattoo here, a tattoo here. This one's great. This one's kind of jacked. They hate this one because the guy didn't talk to him. It was like, you know, whatever, just like, you know, wasn't very personable, didn't have a good bedside manner. And like, yeah, I don't know, this one's kind of, and then they've got this jacked up piece of shit over here. Oh, dude, this guy was my bro, man. He fucking really went all out on it. And it's like, yeah, really did go all out on it, you know. But yeah, you know, you know, and that's also why when I look at my own experience, when I said earlier that I have tattoos that to me are just kind of pretty wallpaper. And then I have tattoos that seriously are like misspelled lettering from 3 a.m. from a good friend that are golden to me, because they have, when I look at it, it's not just that's pretty, it's that, well, maybe it's not even pretty, but it has this like this feeling with it. It has the, you know, I remember that night, I remember that friendship, I remember the music we were listening to, you know, and it has that kind of sentimental value, you know, like when I first started getting tattooed, I always kind of ascribed to that idea, and this goes with my whole association with tattoos and traveling and exoticness, was that it was like, you know, when you see an old steamer trunk from the 30s and it's got stickers all over from every city and country it's been in, and that's, you know, you buy a new steamer trunk, it's just a dumb steamer trunk. 10 years and it's covered in stickers and it's golden. And to me, that's what tattoos were like. Like each one was a sticker. Like any tattoo I have, I can look at and I'm like, I remember who I was dating, what music I was listening to, where I was working, what my mindset was. I mean, not always clearly, but I remember more or less, you know. And that's part of the fun for me, is that, you know, like I really, don't get me wrong, I have tremendous respect and see so much beauty in like beautifully done sleeves and bodysuits. But just psychologically for me, I could never do that, because you basically then just have one tattoo, you know, and it might be one perfect and beautiful tattoo, and I love seeing that on other people. But for myself, I was always more into the collection, getting a bunch of little things that eventually fit together and form something, you know, more cohesive, but that each of the tattoos is their own thing with a little room to breathe, you know, like not jamming too much background behind everything and making it all bleed together, but having like bam, 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 you know, and that these things being your history emblazoned in your flesh. To me, that was a very important thing. I was like, if you get everything done, if you go and get a bodysuit, take a couple of years doing it or whatever, that's those 2 years of your life. And that's your whole body. And that's fine. But for me, like I remember talking to Eddie Deutsch one time, you know, I was about 25. He was about the same age, I think. He started tattooing earlier than me, but he started real young.
Yep.
And he was always obsessed, I have to be finished by the time I'm 30. And I was like, what do you mean finished? I was like, I have to have all my tattoos by the time I'm 30. I was like, why? He's like, because then I'll be a man. Then I'll be 30, I'll be finished, I'll have reached that plateau. And I was like, I understood what he meant, but I was like, well, then what happens when you see something really fucking cool when you're 35 or 40? Like, what, you know, what about stuff you want to get tattooed when you're 50? You're done. What do you do then? You know, like, I don't ever want to be finished. I always want to have at least a little more space because
Right.
there's always going to be something else that I want to get in there. You know, it's evolution. It's the evolution of your life on your skin. You know, to me.
Yeah, a little better taste.
I feel like SF really just defined how people got
Oh, yeah.
big work. Like it just like I know Ed had a ton to do with that.
Yeah.
Bringing the aesthetic from Japan.
But Deutsch was the one who really pushed it with the kids. Because, man, when
Right.
Deutsch came out, everybody wanted to be fucking Eddie Deutsch, man. Everybody. Because, you know, it was Pacheco, Atchison, and Deutsch were like
And
the
Kane.
fucking... And Kane. You know, they were the ones who everybody was like, you know, I gotta be
Me.
like them.
That was me.
Yeah.
I was like looking in tattoo magazines. I was like, these guys, I want to be them. I want to get this. I have to tattoo. I have to tattoo
Yeah.
now because I had already wanted to tattoo since I was young. But I was like, I have to do
Well, it
this.
changed the way we looked at everything, you know? It was totally like...
Yeah, man.
Suddenly tattooing became something different. You know, it wasn't what it
big
was
time.
before.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, in every way, like socially as well as,
Right.
you know, as well as technically and design wise, you know. But
So that's perfect. Let's talk about your time a little bit at Tattoo City with the people you worked with and how different people influenced you. It doesn't have to be with art. It could be, you know, point of view, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about that.
I felt really lucky to have worked with a lot of people and have a lot of influence from many people. So I feel weird trying to come up with a list.
No, I don't
I
like
know
for a
I'm
list.
gonna like, you know, forget
Yeah,
or,
of course.
you know, but anyways.
But we already touched on Terry, so that's why I wanted to just
Terry
expand
was
on
a
that
huge
a bit.
one for me. You know, working with him was a giant thing, and especially just as a person.
Right.
Not just as a tattooer. Like, I really admired Terry. Was one of the most, he had the most profound self-control and just this fastidiousness that used to at times drive me nuts, because it's like sometimes like, Terry, just fucking just do this, but everything had to be done just right always, and I just always respected that so much about him. But at Tattoo City, you know, my experience with Tattoo City kind of started before I worked there, because for a long time I worked across the street, but I got to be good friends with Freddie and Dan in particular, and Eddie too, and Igor Mortis, who worked there at the time, was a good friend of mine.
Right.
And so I used to go over there, like, we weren't that busy like they were, so when there was nothing going on, I'd go straight over to Tattoo City and be hanging out there, you know, and like talking to them, trying to pick up what I could from watching them, and just, you know, enjoying the insane vibe there. It was the first shop I had ever been to that was super international, in the sense that, like, I'd go in there one day and there's like kids from Holland getting tattooed, next day kids from Japan, then local kids. Like, it just felt like Tattoo City at the time felt like it was the fucking nexus of tattooing in the world.
It was.
Is what it felt like to me. It was like the whole world was looking at that shop. And there was a good reason, you know, and I really enjoyed how all the guys there had very different approaches. And in the beginning, when I first started tattooing, you know, looking at my work now, it seems funny, but I was really, really just into like really bold, emblematic, traditional. Like, Dan Higgs was really probably my biggest influence as far as active tattooers that I was around at that time, you know. And, you know, we talked, I did get the chance to work with Dan a lot at Tattoo City, and we had a lot of conversations that really affected the way I thought about tattooing. He had a lot of great ideological and philosophical ideas about tattooing, you know, like so many things he said that I think about all the time now that were really, really smart, you know.
Can you share one of those?
Yeah, well, there's one that's pretty well known.
Because we're not going to talk to Van.
Yeah. There's one that's pretty well known, I think, that really impressed me early on. He had told me this, and I think he later said in an article where he was talking about tradition and talking about, you know, because this was a time when he was first starting to really get big and a lot of attention. There was all these other people doing traditional, but they weren't doing it in the way he was. There was something different, you know. And he talked to me one time about traditional is not about trying to pretend that it's 1956 forever and doing everything that way. He was like, look at Sailor Jerry. He was always trying to find new stuff, new ways of doing things. Traditional isn't about finding a dogma and sticking to it religiously. Tradition is about being part of a lineage, about taking from what came before you, but helping that evolve and move on by adding your own thing, with the idea that that will eventually be taken by the next generation and turned into something else, you know, and that idea of being part of a lineage, you know, that it wasn't like, oh, what we're doing, this is now and everything's now. It was like, you know, recognizing your place where you were and your connection with the past and your connection with the future, that's what tradition was about, you know, carrying something on that evolves. Not trying to keep some dead period alive, you know. That's not tradition. That's just taxidermy.
It sounds a little like shuhari. You know that? It's a Japanese phrase. It means keeping tradition, breaking tradition, and leaving tradition.
Oh.
And then you start over, and then you start over again.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It
Shuhari?
Shuhari. Yeah,
Shuhari.
It's 3. Shuhari.
Okay, shuhari.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds to me it says a lot of the same things.
Well, the Japanese definitely have a really good feeling about ideas about that kind of, you know, connection, that kind of lineage thing,
right.
You know. But another thing he told me one time that really, you know, I thought was interesting. He would just so many things, but like we were talking one time about customers, and you know, like as we were discussing earlier, difficulty of like. Well, especially in the 90s, there was this weird thing, and I'm sure you remember how there was this period where it was like everybody was doing so much crazy shit that a lot of customers, everything had to be crazier, and they wanted to put in everything but the kitchen sink, and these customers would come in with the most insane, involved ideas that were mostly not very workable, you know?
Right.
But at the same time, then people come in and don't know what they want. That's frustrating too. And Dan was like, the perfect customer knows exactly what they want, but not how they want it. And that nails it. It's like, I want a cat, I want a car, but I don't know how I want it. That's perfect. Because it always throws me off when people don't have something specifically that they want. I was like, you gotta want something.
Right.
You know?
But then it lets the artist be an artist.
Yeah. So having an idea of what they want, and that also gives me more of a feeling of security as far as their connection to it when they have that, you know. So I mean, like the best thing is they come in with just a couple of words, but are open to you interpreting that, you know. That's when it works perfectly, you know. Yeah, Dan was definitely a font of wisdom on a lot of things, you know.
Absolutely.
Freddie was a big one for me. Early on, a big influence, because what happened was, for me stylistically, before I was a tattooer, all the stuff I did was just like crazy, like ballpoint pen and pencil art, like almost like Chicano style, but not Chicano themes, but that kind of technique, you know, and you know, a lot of emphasis on detail and fine shading. So it was weird that when I got into tattooing, I was into this like blocky, flat kind of traditional. And over time, as I kept pursuing that traditional style, I realized, that I was good at designing it, but I wasn't that great at rendering it. I didn't have the craft down well enough to do like a bunch of fucking solid-ass red, you know. I didn't have the confidence of that kind of like really like heavy craftsmanship that it requires, you know. And also, you know, my previous experience with more finer detailed stuff, I had this I did also have this, this interest in a certain grace in tattoos, a certain elegance, which wasn't really an element so much in that kind of, traditional work. And so Freddie was a big kind of lighthouse for me in a way, as far as like what I really loved about Freddie's work was that Freddie always knew his stuff came from a traditional direction. He didn't do a lot of the crazy shit that people were trying to do at that point. He wasn't packing everything with chrome and negative space. But, so it had this traditional vibe to it, but at the same time, he brought a really profound elegance and grace to it that very few people in the Bay Area at that time were doing.
Right.
Early 90s in SF, it was all about, you didn't use a liner smaller than a 7, unless you're doing some little, niggly thing in the middle of something that's just too detailed. But like, it was all about everything being over the top, super fucking bold and heavy. And I loved that. But at the same time, Freddie's grace and elegance really appealed to me. And it seemed to me like a direction for a midway between that kind of earlier style of drawing that I had done before tattooing and that bold, emblematic weight of traditional, So Freddie was really a huge, and he was also, back then, one of the friendliest and most helpful tattooers, that I knew. He was always very, very eager to help. Freddie's a very giving person, and he was always like that, I have a lot of gratitude to him for helping me out a lot in the beginning, So that was a huge influence. I mean, obviously Henry, who apprenticed me, was a gigantic influence, he also had, like Freddie, this, very traditional base, but also really put in a lot of fluidity, a lot of grace and elegance in his designs that really appealed to me, and that was a huge influence. And of course, Ed, without a doubt. I mean, how can you work for Ed Hardy for 5 years and say that's not a massive influence? But in particular with the girls, Ed was a big influence, not in the way I did them necessarily. Mine didn't look like his, but, actually a lot of the whole girl transitioning from pinup to girl head thing was largely influenced by Ed, because there was a tattoo when I first started working there. I was like, oh, I get to get tattooed by Ed now. And there was a design that I had seen at Chuck Eldridge's shop. It was an old design he had done in the 70s. And it was drawn up as something for like a pectoral piece, And it was this girl head. Well, I'll show you. I have it. It was this girl head, and it was just like the head and neck. And, you didn't see much of that. And I got it from him, and you can really see where like a lot of what I started doing in the late 90s and early 2000s came from, doing the big face where you can have a lot of fun with the eyes, do a lot of detail in the face because that's where all the drama is, but also kind of drowning it in ornament, And that was really, like, getting that tattoo was a huge, huge step in my development of girl heads and stuff. So, that was a big deal.
It's also interesting too, because it also has a lot of aspects of what you do, which is it just has a very singular line. There's almost no black shading in it.
Oh, I do lots of black shading.
Well, some of the earlier stuff wasn't though.
No, earlier I didn't as much.
Right.
Yeah.
So that one has this harkens to that to me. I see some like older work that doesn't have a lot of black in parts of the face. It's more reliant on line.
Well, on the face, just tons of black around the eyes. But
sure.
Yeah, nothing much in the I feel like in girl faces less is more. It's always the further you go with adding too much shading, the easier it is to
ruin it.
End up making them look just not the way you want.
It's so hard, right?
Yeah.
But you have to really know how to get that less in there.
Yeah, and you got to balance it out by adding some heaviness in like the eyes, and that's why I almost always do black hair, to give some weight to it, But yeah, that so Ed was a huge influence in that. There's been so many people I've worked with that I've learned so much from. As I said, even people that sometimes I worked with and I would learn things from them by not liking what they did and learning through that not to go in certain directions that might have been tempting,
Right.
I'm trying to think of, Candy Everett was a huge influence on me. I did get to work with her a lot, but especially with the girls, as far as when I first started drawing girls for tattoos, the two people whose girls I really looked to the most was Candy Everett. There's that sexy nun that she did on the very back of, I think it's Life and Death Tattoos. It's on the back cover.
Yep.
When I saw that, I was like, that's one of the most perfect pinups I've ever seen, And so I really started paying a lot of attention to her work. And also Jill Jordan, who's a name I rarely hear anymore. Is she still around?
I don't know. LA tattooer?
Yeah, I know, but I just never hear her name.
I don't either.
But yeah, her stuff, really...
Yeah, she was one of the early, a really good... female imagery illustration.
Well, she had that strength that Bob's stuff had because she apprenticed with him.
Right.
So she had that kind of no bullshit fucking in for the kill approach.
Right.
But yet she really knew how to add that delicate femininity.
Right.
That a lot of the people who tattooed like that weren't able to do.
It was more refined. She used a lighter line for a lot of it.
Yeah.
But it still was super
she was
strong.
Still not afraid to use a ton of black.
Right, yeah.
And
because
she
had such an amazing...
So that was huge. I never did get to work with Jill, but yeah, her stuff was a big influence on me early on. I mean, I won't even mention all the old Dead for a Million Years tattooers that are all obvious, like Ben Corday and Bob Wicks and stuff like that. Everybody knows those. It's. I mean, I guess that I could probably sit here all night and talk about influences, but I think that would be kind of a pretty good core, sort of thing for me, But yeah, and as far as aside from just design and technical tattooing, people who affected the way I thought about tattooing, the way I approach it, ethically, I think, Henry was the first one to really instill a lot of that in me. Though, like I said earlier, a lot of the best lessons Henry taught me, I was fucking 19. I didn't know shit. My head was so firmly up my ass that I didn't pick up on a lot of these lessons until some cases 10, 15 years later. I'm like, this is what he meant, and he was totally right, But, so that was a big one. And Dan, too, this was another Dan one that I was thinking of earlier. Actually, probably the thing that Dan said that impressed me the most ever about this was I asked him one day, I was like, so when your tattoo career is done, when it's all said and done and everything's over, what would you like to have achieved? And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy, like, what do you mean? He'd never really thought about it. And I was like, well, what would you like to look back on your career and think, I did this, And he was like, well, the most important thing for me is to come up with at least one design that becomes part of the global tattoo vocabulary. And I thought that was one of the most astounding things to say. I'd never heard anybody say stuff like that before. The idea, and it goes back with what he had to say about tradition, about giving to it, about coming up with some design or some element that goes into tattooing and becomes part of it. That's what he wanted to achieve. And I was just like, fuck, dude, that's a great way to think about it, Because, most people would be like, oh, I want to be the best. I want to do all this and that, and I want everybody to fucking love me and all this shit. And he was just like, no, I want to contribute something to it, I want to do something that becomes a lasting part of the tattoo vocabulary, that generations from now people will have no idea who I am or that I came up with it, but that it's part of what they do, And I really liked that idea.